Hi friends, Lorelei Black from Blade Broom, and this week we're going to be talking about some Samhain traditions that you might be exploring as we come into Samhain Tide. So I use the term tide for pretty much all of the Sabbats because I see them as seasons and not just a singular day on which we celebrate the particular Sabbat. Our ancestors usually didn't just celebrate these seasons on one particular day and call it done. They saw them as a period of time in which they celebrated, and they had, usually several things leading up to that, much like we do with those holidays that really resonate with us. And of course, contemporarily, they've gotten taken over. A lot of our favorite holidays have gotten taken over by corporate entities that want to make a buck off of them. That doesn't have to be the case, obviously, with these spiritual traditions of ours. They're very home-based and they don't have to cost you a lot of money. In fact, I would really urge you not to make them cost you a lot of money. What you do doesn't have to be Instagram ready. It doesn't have to be, picture perfect in all those ways. It just needs to be meaningful for you. Anyway, hopping off my soapbox and getting to the meat of the thing that we're talking about. So I'm going to be sharing with you actually several different traditions that I have done with my covens in the past. Some of them are coming out of the tradition in which I was raised up in, and some of them, actually all of them. All of the things that I'm going to be sharing with you are things that I was taught in my initial witchcraft tradition, which was called Clan of the Laughing Dragon out in California. And it was very much rooted in practices that were brought down to us through teachings from Clan of Tubal-Cain through 1734, but it also had some other influences from Druidry and from Gardnerian practice too. My high priestess had some Gardnerian background in there as well. And then there were things that I think were just personal gnosis for her that also got sort of melded into the practice. So, but you'll see within what I'm sharing with you, and these are practices that I've continued doing for the 20 plus years since then, that there is a lot of traditional practice, traditional folk ways that are within these things. So honestly, we did all of these during our Samhain season, which was longer for us than the month of October. We would start at the dark moon in October, whenever that was. And then we would go until 15 degrees Scorpio, which was our last day of Samhain. And that was the official date of Samhain for us. And so sometimes that would be, a full 4 weeks. And October got like the short little tiny period that we honored October as October, and then we jumped into the month of Samhain, and we did lots and lots of ritual activities, which I am going to share with you now, and you can sort of pick and choose what you would like to incorporate into your activities. So you might do things like establish an ancestor altar if you don't already have one. I have a great video on ancestor work and how to honor your ancestors and what you might include on an ancestor altar. Some people don't have space in their home to have an ancestor altar up all year long. I do, because ancestor work is such a major part of the work that I do as a witch. But if you don't, this is a great time of year to establish an ancestor altar, at least temporarily. Clear off a little bit of space on a bookshelf, put up a collapsible table like a TV dinner tray or something, just so that you have some space for your ancestors to be welcomed into your home right now. And then another thing that I would highly recommend for this time of year, because it is a portal time, and all of the Gaelic Sabbats, Beltane, Samhain, Lammas, and Imbolc, are all sort of portal times where that veil is thin, and particularly Beltane and Samhain, those life and death portals are very, very thin. The borders between the worlds are very thin. Establish a guardian to guard you and your family and your home. We have the example already in both popular culture and in the the traditional cultural mindset of that gourd that has been carved into the face. And it could be a comical face, it could be a scary face, it could be something to frighten away the spirits or to banish them with laughter. But that jack-o'-lantern is very much that guardian at your door. It's not enough just to carve it, though. Invite that guardian into the gourd, into the pumpkin, you know. Intentionally set it as a ward at your door and leave it there for the whole time. And know that if it gets gooey and goopy and black and gross, it's doing its work. You know, it's keeping that negativity away from your door. It's keeping those baneful spirits from entering your home and only allowing your ancestors and the good spirits that you want to be a part of your work in. Another thing that most people want to do is to welcome their beloved dead into their home. And there are a few ways that you can do this. So you can do it fairly informally if you like, just by making a statement in front of your ancestor altar that you would like to welcome those who have passed, who have been close to you. Or you might do something more formal by announcing who you are and who you would like to have come and join you. These are referred to as litanies of the dead, or lineage chants, or naming your distaff line or your spear line. So typically what I recommend for folks is to name their biological line as far back as they know, either their mother's mother's mothers or their father's father's fathers, for as far back as they know. And if you don't know, so like in my family, my father was adopted. So I don't have that genealogical information. So I do skip over to the adopted side because that's the family that raised me, and actually or that raised him. So in Celtic tradition, in Gaelic tradition, in Brythonic tradition, you call out to the blood, but you also call out to the family of fosterage. So there's traditions for both. You don't have to be bound just by that blood because, as we know, family is more than just blood. So it's good to call on the blood. Those blood ties are important, but the choices are also important too. So that distaff line, for instance, might look something like, and I'm going to make up names, right? I am Sarah Jean, daughter of Nancy Jane, daughter of Mary Lou, daughter of Mary Hicks, daughter of, and then you just keep going as far back as you know. So, and that can be a very powerful thing. Litanies of the dead are often incorporated into Samhain work in the sense that they can be lists of names of people that you want to honor who have passed, either in this past year, and we've lost so many people in this past year due to the pandemic, due to just due to all kinds of factors. There have been so many things. Oh my gosh, 2020 has been... That list is going to be incredible. Like, it's going to be such a powerful time, I think, for so many of us thinking about the litany of 2020. So just thinking about that. But then sometimes people do litanies that go back, you know, that incorporate other segments of the dead, that might be significant people in their family that they know are watching out for them, or that they particularly want to give honor to, or who have been on their mind a lot recently, because that's often an indicator that those people are reaching out and wanting acknowledgement, or are just more visible and more present in your life. Or you might want to include within the litany that you read or that you recite or that you improvise, on the spot. You might want to include what I would call your particular saints, or your guides might be another term that you might use. So your guides within the craft, those sort of mentors that you look to that are beyond the veil already. So if there are authors or activists or other people whose work you have found particularly inspiring and moving and insightful and important to who you are as a person or who you are as a witch or within your occupation, it is good and worthy to include them also in your litany of the dead. Another thing that is very commonly done and that I have found great meaning within Samhain traditions is a dumb feast or a dumb supper. And the dumb feast is a custom in which we prepare a meal of, could be our favorite foods, it could be foods that we know that our ancestors enjoyed when they were living, it could be regional or family traditional favorites. Really the list of what you might include in your dumb supper is endless. That's really between you and your ancestors as far as I'm concerned. And if you're doing this with other people, everybody might bring a dish, something that you know that you'll enjoy and that you think that your ancestors will enjoy. And then you make a plate for the ancestors and you make a plate for yourself, and you and they should both have one of everything that is being offered, even if it's just a taste. The ancestors don't need a lot of those things, and you don't necessarily have to have a lot, but by you having some, they get to taste and enjoy what you have offered them. And so, and one of the reasons that you do this in silence is so that you enter sort of a light meditative trance state, and also so that you get to hear and experience some communication with them. And if you do this in a ritual setting, which my Coven tradition always has done this from start to finish, we've done the entire ritual in silence. So the casting of the circle, the raising of the ritual spaces, whether that's realms or quarters or however you're doing your ritual spaces, all of that we would do silently without any words at all. I have funny stories about that, including very small children within the Coven's family group, because this was always a family ritual for us, taking advantage of the silence of the adults. My daughter, who is now almost 21, when she was about 6, drastically took advantage of the situation because she knew that the adults couldn't tattle on her very easily because they couldn't say anything. And then we also had one time when one of my Coven brothers' cloak caught on fire. The sleeve of his cloak caught fire from a candle, and my husband at the time just swooped across the circle and put it out and then went back away. That was actually our very first dumb supper ever, and that was interesting. So, dumb suppers definitely end up having a life all of their own in that sense. You end up getting, I would say those were standout experiences in terms of things that the living did and engaged in, but the interactions with the dead are always very significant and profound, I find. And of course those are not something I would share necessarily right here. But that communication with the dead is one of the hallmarks of Samhain. And so this is a great time of year. And I would say now, we've just had the dark moon in October. So from now until the actual cross quarter day of 15 degrees Scorpio, which does mark the point between the fall equinox and the winter solstice, which is astrological Samhain, is just a very, very potent time for communicating with the dead and with spirits who are disembodied. in general. So engaging in any kind of necromancy and any kind of spirit communication and any kind of communication with the dead, now is a perfect time to do that. And especially if you don't feel like you have a particular skill set developed already in that area, this is a good time to work on that. So tools that are particularly good for this, because this season is very much in alignment with the element of water, using watery aligned elements or watery aligned tools are great for that. So things like scrying into water bowls, scrying into dark mirrors, scrying into a cauldron that's filled with water. All of those are going to be particularly helpful. But you can also do things that are more group focused. Those are all very individual. So if you're a solitary practitioner, those are going to be easier to access. But if you do have the benefit of working with a partner or a group, you could do things like using a talking board or a Ouija board, or engaging in something like a seance. Both of those have very loaded connotations for a lot of people, but I'm going to give you the same advice that I give everybody on this topic, which is they are no more dangerous than a cell phone or the internet. Both of those things, if you just randomly call up strangers or text strangers or, start chatting with people that you don't know online or wander into, 4chan, like, those are scary things to do, right? Like, those are emotionally, psychologically not safe things to do. If you use the tools of the craft unprepared, those are also emotionally and psychologically probably not safe things to do. You need to know how to banish, you need to know how to ground and center, you need to know how to create protective spaces for yourself, you need to, have these basic things in place. But if you have that, a talking board is no more terrifying than a scrying bowl, or than a dark mirror, or than tarot cards, or than a pendulum. They're just tools. And it's still just communication. And it's essentially the same as calling somebody on the phone. So we'll talk more about talking boards in a future episode. And we'll get more into that. But my other caution on it is, if you're looking to be terrified, there are definitely spirits out there that'll help you along with that goal. But if you're looking for genuine communication with your beloved dead, you can find that on the talking board. And it can be a very rewarding experience. And if you come into it with a no nonsense, I'm not going to tolerate any bullshit from chuckleheads, the same way that you would if you went onto the internet, then that's what you'll get, is no nonsense from chuckleheads on the talking board. And it'll be great. So a couple of other final things that are done traditionally at Samhain that you don't hear a lot of folks talking about are bringing in the last harvest. Sometimes you see references to this, the fact that Samhain marks the last harvest, and that anything that's left in the fields after Samhain, or like at midnight on Samhain, anything that's left belongs to the She, belongs to the fairies, belongs to the good neighbors after that point. And so one of the ways that you can mark this is that if you have not already finished putting away your garden, now is the time to do that. And you can bring ritual and sanctity and consecration to that act by finishing tidying up your garden or your farm plot, or whatever you might have going on in your outside spaces around your home. And in the ritual year cycle, it also, for many traditions, marks the death of of the harvest gods. It marks the death of those regenerative gods. So this is a time when some traditions will enact putting the gods to rest, or enact the final sacrifice of the gods that weren't sacrificed, perhaps, at Lammas. So often there was a sacrifice at Lammas. That was the first of the harvests. But this is the final harvest. This is the one that prepares us for winter, for the long, cold, dark of winter. And at winter solstice, the young sun god is reborn, but reborn from what, if not the final death now? So, so in some traditions, you'll see a ritual reenactment of that, either facing the gatekeeper of death right now, or of putting the gods to rest now in some capacity. And what that looks like can be different from different traditions, but you can see that as well. So those are just some thoughts about how you might honor this time. And that's a lot. It's a lot to do. I would not recommend trying to do all of it. That is too much. I've done all of that in one Samhain cycle. My coven used to do all of that, and it was, I'll admit it was too much. But there are some beautiful things there, and if you take a little here and maybe a little next year and try out some different things, or maybe incorporate a few things into one ritual, you might find that there's a lot of myth and poetry that you can work with that might speak to you on a deep level. Let me know what you think. Let me know what it is that you're doing, because I love to hear from you guys. I like to know what works for you, and I like to get ideas for myself as well. So leave comments, like, subscribe, share, do all those things, and I'll see you guys back here next Monday at noon. Bye, guys.